Being from a very large family myself, I can relate to this very well. For instance, we have several men named John, David, and other names that are used as family names. In such cases, to keep the men separated, the family begins to deploy nicknames to separate the men when calling them to dinner. But this was not so easy to do in the case of Valentine Hatfield. Today, we will try our best to sort out the confusion surrounding Valentine Hatfield's name and office as Justice of the Peace. When we did the overview, we simply went by the story as it was told over and over again, with trying our best to be as historically accurate in our telling of the feud. I did not realize that there were a lot, and I do mean a lot, of Valentine Hatfields. We will dive into and sort out some of them. All aboard the Kentucky-Tennessee Living Time Machine. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine for our flight back in time, but it convinces the YouTube algorithm that we need a bigger vehicle to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. Justice of the Peace clarification. In our overview of the Hatfield and McCoy feud, we said that there was a Justice of the Peace who had heard the case of the hog. Evidently, there were several Justices of the Peace in the area. Valentine Hatfield, Matthew Hatfield, and Anderson Preacher Ants Hatfield were named as possible Justice of the Peace in this case. This is very important because there are sources that simply list the person over this case as Justice Hatfield. From the majority of the sources that we could find, Valentine Wall Hatfield had nothing to do with the hog case. However, since he is named in some cases, for clarification, we will briefly go over the case. Floyd Hatfield, the cousin to Ants, had a hog. Randolph McCoy claimed the hog was his. There were notches in the pig's ear, which gave credence that this was a McCoy hog and not a Hatfield one. The matter was taken to a local Justice of the Peace. The community that the trial took place in had a very heavy McCoy influence. However, a Hatfield presided. Testimony was given by Bill Stanton, who was related to both families and was a member of the McCoy extended family by blood, but had married into the Hatfield clan. Stanton had testified in Floyd Hatfield's favor. Justice Hatfield took his testimony into account and ruled for the Hatfields. He then removed the theft charge against Floyd Hatfield and allowed him to retain possession of the hog. We took this opportunity to look at all three men who were possible Justice of the Peace in this case. We are in no way saying that this event did not take place. We are currently in the understanding that it did to explain the death of Bill Stanton. However, there might be enough evidence that another unnamed Hatfield served in this manner and held the court case before them. First, we looked up Preacher Ants because his name is so closely associated with devil ants. It seems that Reverend or Preacher Anderson Hatfield was the son of Andrew Hatfield and Susanna Susan Trent Hatfield. Preacher Ants would have been a cousin to devil ants. But this is not all that we have found. It seems, according to the article, The Hatfields of Blackberry Creek, written by Thomas Dotson, source in the description box, Preacher Ants was not a Justice of the Peace during the hog trial. To quote his article, quote, at the time of the purported pig trial, which never happened, Preacher Ants did not live in the house where the market now stands. The preacher was living at Blue Spring in 1878 and was not the Justice of the Peace at the time, unquote. Okay, so Dawson does not believe that the pig trial took place at all. But it is interesting that the author does say that Preacher Ants was not even in the area at that time. But let's go back to another source that states that Matthew Hatfield was Justice of the Peace of the case. Matthew Ellison, Matt Hatfield, was a Pike County constable during the Hatfield and McCoy feud. He was the son of Ephraim Hatfield and Phoebe Easter Vance Hatfield. If this is the correct Matt Hatfield, then he could not have been justice of the peace that is spoken about in the trial either. Being both a constable and a justice of the peace was simply not done. So, what about the sources that state that Valentine Hatfield heard this trial? It seems that there is no substantial evidence for this either. Currently, we could not find the date that Hatfield became a justice of the peace. So, for now, we have to discount him as a potential justice in this matter. Again, we are not discounting that the pig trial took place. We firmly believe that there is a huge grain of truth to it. After all, supposedly, Bill Stanton lost his life over the testimony he gave on who owned the said pig. We are only putting forth the research that we have found to let you make up your own mind about the matter. All we can say is, if neither of the men listed heard the trial, who did? It is now a question we leave to further evidence coming to light as time marches on. The Valentine Hatfield confusion. Like the name Anderson Hatfield, there were several men named Valentine Hatfield. As one example, there was a Valentine Hatfield that would show up after Wall's death in the newspapers. Between 1915 and 1918, a Valentine Hatfield was accused of stealing an election. He was accused of taking votes out of a ballot box. This case went to trial, and Hatfield was acquitted of all the charges. We have found the name of Valentine Hatfield related to other cases in West Virginia, but none of the dates line up with the life of the Valentine Hatfield we are covering. We can confirm that this was very true in the family, as the website's Ancestors Family Search had an article named Justice Valentine David Hatfield, with a newspaper report inside of it. Unfortunately, we do not know the source of this newspaper article, but we find it very interesting. Quote, Valentine Ephraim Traditional Names. Logan, July 23rd. How the given names of Ephraim and Valentine have both been used in one branch of the Hatfield family for 6 generations was brought out in discussions following the annual Hatfield family picnic on Main Island Creek Sunday. The first Hatfield to settle in Kentucky 150 years ago was named Ephraim. He had a son named Valentine, whose nickname was Wall, and a curious coincidence is that all Valentine Hatfields since have been familiarly called Wall. Valentine Hatfield's son was named for his grandfather, Ephraim, and was known as Big Ephraim. Big Ephraim's son was christened Valentine and was one of the Hatfields active in the McCoy War. He was known widely as Uncle Wall. Uncle Wall's son, Eve Davis Hatfield, has named his own son Valentine, unquote. So, as you can see, if 6 generations all have an Ephraim and a Valentine in it, it would stand to reason that there would be confusion, especially if the Valentine named men had a nickname of Wall. In next week's video, we will begin with a dive into the interference of Wall Hatfield with the warrants and indictments made against a member of the Hatfield clan, and why this interference would be attached to his name. Thank you. We at Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the Appalachian Feuds. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification button. Be sure to double check that you are subscribed, as some of our viewers are finding that they are no longer subscribed to our channel. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Appalachian history.